it's time to go through and cover the next batch of quarterbacks. So starting off, we're going to go with the guys that either have already committed or guys that are 100% 24/7 sports predictions. So, i.e., they are in all likelihood going to those locations. Let's start off with our second batch of quarterbacks. Dillon Gabriel, former Oklahoma quarterback. He has committed to Oregon. He entered the portal since we last recorded, and now he has committed to the Oregon Ducks. What's your take on this one? Because I would say, as of right now, this is probably the most impactful commitment of the 2023/24 transfer portal cycle.
My thoughts, Shoob, are it'll be business as usual at Oregon with Dillon Gabriel coming in. I mean, they took Bo Nix, who looked absolutely just done as a player, as a quarterback at Auburn, and they revitalized his career, made him a Heisman finalist. They're gonna get him at least a shot in the NFL because of how he did. And I think Gabriel will do great there. He'll flourish in that system. And I've heard some say Gabriel's just really a good college quarterback, not maybe an NFL ceiling type guy, but that's what you need to win a championship. You just need a good college quarterback. So I think it's a great ad for the Ducks, especially with Ty Thompson entering the portal today. I mean, you really were going to be kind of in a hole there. So I think he's going to do fantastic.
Yeah, but Ty Thompson's portal entrance was a result of Dillon Gabriel going to Oregon.
Yes, that's a good point.
But you know what? I agree with you, man. Dillon Gabriel is he's the perfect example of a guy that's a great college player but doesn't have that NFL ceiling. And you know what? Dillon Gabriel's in college football at the right time because this is the new era. We can play college football and still make, high six figures, even seven figures, just playing college football as long as we can, exhaust that eligibility out. And that's what Dillon Gabriel is doing. And you know what, man? He's probably better off staying another year and probably making, I'm assuming he's going to make seven figures at Oregon. And it's like, hey, if you don't really have an NFL ceiling, or maybe you're at best, you're like a career third string quarterback in the NFL, like go ahead and play another year of college ball and make $1 million. That's still life-changing money, and you'll also have a chance to win something significant at the college level as a starter. And you get to play, you get to be the guy at a college program. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of this. Will Rogers, I think, is another example. We talked a little bit about him. Dillon Gabriel is a guy that can definitely give Oregon a high floor. I think in terms of Oregon being in the new Big Ten, and, they got some big boppers on their schedule next year. I don't know if he's going to give them as high of a ceiling as they had this year with Nix, with the way that Nix was playing. But I think the floor for Oregon, it's going to stay there. And I think if you're Oregon, I think if you are Dan Lanning, that's kind of what you were looking for. You're looking to get the guy that can, hey, he's going to win us at least 8 games next year, no matter what. Good college quarterback. And that's what Dillon Gabriel is. Very accurate.
There's proof of concept.
Yes.
There's no one, I don't think there's any unknowns. It's, can you unlock that next potential? Which maybe you can.
Kind of feel like we know who Dillon Gabriel is. I think to me, it's more of a high floor play, and it's a guy that can hit those check downs and do exactly what they need him to do. So I'd say probably a good land for Oregon, though I was really interested to see if they could get one of those other guys like a Cam Ward or a guy that maybe had a higher ceiling. But, this one makes sense, though. And I think if you're Oregon, you got to be happy with this. Like, you're still going to have a good team next year at the very least. Aidan Chiles. Oof, Oregon State fans. Listen, this one's tough. This one's tough to swallow, but Aidan Chiles is in the portal now, and we've liked him from the very get-go. We've liked him when he first committed to Oregon State. He was a 96th grade recruiting ranking on 24/7 Sports, and now he's got a 100% prediction to Michigan State. So in all likelihood, Aidan Chiles is going to be following his head coach out there to East Lansing. This one's not surprising at all, but at the same time, Michigan State's looking pretty good right now. I'm liking the future outlook for Michigan State if they can land Chiles here, which looks like they will.
No, I think he's got a very kind of favorable schedule to get his feet wet as a collegiate starter. I mean, some of your toughest games, Ohio State is at home. Then you're going to go play Oregon. Who knows what Iowa will look like? I mean, they might still have a good defense, but who knows if Phil Parker gets poached or if Ferentz retires, play at Michigan, and then really, I mean that's it for like your tough games next year. So I say all that to make the point that this is a good first year for him to take the reins in a rebuilding year, and then potentially in his, assuming he redshirted in his redshirt sophomore year, then so in 2025, maybe Michigan State can compete to be an upper half part of a team in the Big Ten and potentially be a playoff dark horse. So I like that, and I like that move for Chiles because it just makes no sense to stay at Oregon State and beat up on Mountain West teams. All respect to everybody in that statement, but can't blame the kid one bit, and it makes sense. Follow the guy who recruited you.
Are we looking at the same schedule here? Because I see at Oregon, at Michigan, and
Yeah,
Ohio State on that schedule. Or are you talking
no,
about all
Ohio
the other
State at least
games?
is at home. Ohio
Yeah.
State at least is at home, but yes, besides those three, I think all the others are at least,
Okay,
you
I see
know,
what you're saying.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I'd say outside of those three, which they're going to be underdogs in, but outside of those three, like if this Michigan State team reaches its ceiling in year one with Jonathan Smith, this could be a 9-3 team. I think best
Yeah,
case scenario they go nine and
I
three,
mean, if Mel Tucker can do it for Pete's sake, why not Jonathan Smith, who you could argue had less resources available?
right? And Aidan Chiles is the key to unlock that potential right there. If you're going to do
Yeah,
that, it starts with Aidan Chiles, and I like it at quarterback, man. I'm very excited to see how Michigan State looks next year, and Aidan Chiles is part of that process. So that's a great get for the Spartans. How about next up, Will Rogers, Mississippi State, former quarterback from Mississippi State. He has a 100% prediction to Washington. Now, this one surprised me a bit. This one surprised me, not going to lie. What are your thoughts on this?
oh, I absolutely love it. You're bringing in a absolute veteran who's seen and been through it all. I mean, he had a coach die. Rest in peace to Mike Leach, one of the greats. He has seen it all. He's going to Washington to a phenomenal system with Coach of the Year, Kalen DeBoer. I mean, look, dude, Penix. I didn't think Penix was anything leaving Indiana. When he went to Washington, I'm like, okay, sick. And he becomes a Heisman finalist, and the story's not over with him yet, in terms of a national championship and an NFL future. I think it's a great move for Will Rogers. I think it's a great way to salvage what's left of his collegiate eligibility to go to the Big Ten with Washington and compete for something relevant. He never had that opportunity at Mississippi State. Let's just call it as it is, and great on him staying there as long as he did, breaking records. But this is a good selfish decision that I think every kid should make. Be selfish. Do what's good for you because you only get to do this for, 4 to 5 years of your life. So fantastic. I love it. Maybe my favorite of this new wave right here, to be honest.
Yeah, I am in agreement there. In fact, I would say that Will Rogers, I think, benefits the most out of anyone from this decision to go to Washington. I think this is something that Will Rogers can thrive there in that system with Kalen DeBoer. The only issue is you're going to lose Odunze. You're going to lose a few of those receivers, man. Like this is a star-studded team. It's not going to be the same team next year. There's going to be a drop-off. And next year's team is just, I mean, let's just call it like it is. It's not going to be as good as this year's Washington team. But if you are Will Rogers in DeBoer's system, he can thrive. And I think it's going to be a really good super senior season for him. I think he's going to be 23 or 24 now, or that's what he's going to
Oh,
be next year.
yes.
Yeah, he's getting
And
up there. But hey, you know what, man? Like go there, make almost nearly $1 million, whatever he's going to be making there with NIL, and enjoy your last year or so of college, man. That's the way to do it. And I kind of feel like I noticed a theme here. Washington and Oregon going to the Big Ten next year. They both have other guys they could go. They had other ways they could go in the portal, but they decided we're going to go with these very veteran, high floor quarterbacks and Will Rogers and Dillon Gabriel, respectively. So I kind of feel like that's kind of the direction that these coaches are looking towards, and the way that they're thinking is, hey, let's get these very fifth year, sixth year, high floor quarterbacks to sort of bridge us into the new Big Ten.
No, it's a win now approach is how I'm looking at it. And for Will Rogers, what I forgot to mention is it's a chance for him to show that he's just not an air raid guy. He has a chance to go into a new system that isn't thrown on him, like 8 months in advance, and with competent offensive coaching, and maybe carve out, a day 3 NFL selection for himself.
Hell yeah. Will Rogers, you can bump your stock up a little bit at Washington and maybe make a good living as a career backup in the NFL. I think that's
Oh yeah.
that's
Oh yeah.
that's the path for him, man. This is the way. This is the way, Will Rogers and Dillon Gabriel for that matter. Next up, and I wish Zan was here for this one, Max Brosmer, the New Hampshire quarterback, is coming up from FCS, and he has committed to Minnesota. Now, all I want to say is if you watched our first transfer portal video or you listened to the full podcast or watched that video, Zan literally called it a complete shot in the dark. He said he thought Max Brosmer would go to Minnesota. He's like, I just could see him going to Minnesota. It sounds like a Minnesota quarterback, and that's where he committed. And I promise you, he had no sources, no inside, nothing, just complete blind guess, shot in the dark. Like, that seems like such a Minnesota quarterback. And he's committed to Minnesota a few days later. I couldn't believe it. I wish he was here on this one because it's just nuts. So if you were listening to that and you thought maybe we had some insight, no, that was just a complete blind shot in the dark guess. But man, that's a hell of a guess for Zan right there. So as far as Max Brosmer himself and this new addition for Minnesota, how do you view this one?
Well, I'm looking at his numbers. He's thrown for 3,000 yards the last 2 seasons. Nearly 30 touchdowns the last 2 seasons. Interceptions under 10. Completion rate in the low to mid 60s, which is absolutely fine. I think it's an upgrade than what Minnesota was running with, and this is the guy who had faith in Kaliakmanis, who took Minnesota's over, and obviously Kaliakmanis just transferred out. But I think, again, not knowing any much more about him, I think it's a fine pickup for Minnesota. I mean, you got a decent SCS kid to commit to your school, and even though they're going to be losing some weapons and the league's going to get harder, I'm intrigued to see if this will be enough to at least get Minnesota bowling every year. But I like it more than I hate it.
Yes, I like that saying. I like it more than I hate it. Yeah, he's got a big arm. We'll say that. He's got some arm talent. I think if you're Minnesota, from a pure passing perspective, it's got to be an upgrade over Kaliakmanis. And hey, I was also there with you on I bought into the Kaliakmanis hype. His nickname was the Greek Rifle, for crying out loud. Like, how could you not buy into that? The Greek Rifle did not deliver. He was the Greek water gun. But you know what? Now Minnesota has what do we call him? The New Hampshire nuke. What do we want? Okay. Is that a good way to put it? The New Hampshire nuke.
I like that.
I like that. So, hey, you gotta keep it up, man. And I think Minnesota definitely, you could tell that they want to go a different direction there with Brosmer. So we'll see how that one pans out. And I want to see where Kaliakmanis ends up too in the portal, because that man's got some talent. He just, it might not be over him just yet, but I'll be interested to see where he goes. But most likely probably somewhere G5, I would guess. But we'll see. Mm-hmm. Brock Vandagriff, he has committed to Kentucky. Now, this one is a little bit interesting. Vandagriff was, he was a guy that hung around. He's been around the last 2 years, I believe, for Georgia. He was one of the top quarterbacks in the 2021 class or 22 class, if I'm not mistaken. And he was a former 5-star player. Now he is leaving Georgia and he's going to Kentucky. So this one's very interesting. What are your thoughts on this?
It's an interesting move to leave Georgia and stay in the conference. I like this for Kentucky. Devin Leary was kind of just the textbook definition of game manager. I mean, just nothing. I mean, yeah, they did beat Louisville to end the year, but nothing about him like scared me. Vandagriff scares me, man. And if he can reach that 5-star potential, that could bode very well for Kentucky, because, I mean, I'd say they put some guys out, like obviously Will Levis, but outside of that, what was it? I'm going to get it, Tim Couch. I mean, so Kentucky's not known for really putting quarterbacks out there. So with a schedule composed, since the SEC is so bougie and can't announce a schedule before December 16th. With a schedule composed of Auburn in their second year, Georgia, South Carolina, and Vandy, and that's at home. UF, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Texas. I like this. This could get Kentucky in their usual, in their not usual, but in their newfound 9-win range that they've been doing under Stoops. So I'd say outside of the what I said, did I say Rogers was my favorite? I probably like this one second because I think it's a good move for Vandagriff and a good move for Kentucky, who is recruiting the athletes and I think has a favorable schedule to do well next season. So I definitely like it. And he was not going to see the field at Georgia. So now he'll get his opportunity when he faces off against them to show them what they potentially were missing out on.
Well said. And I think this is the perfect example of that trickle down effect. You know, there's a market out there for these middle tier Power 5 programs like Kentucky. There's going to be a lot of guys that are highly rated recruits that just don't pan out at Georgia or Alabama or Ohio State. And those guys may not necessarily see the field there, but man, they still got that talent. There was a reason they were high 4 stars and 5 stars coming out of high school. And now they just get a chance to play at, a school like Kentucky and sort of shine there. I mean, I'll take Bo Nix, for example. It didn't pan out at Auburn, then goes to Oregon, and he was a Heisman finalist. So you never know. There's always a market out there. And I think this is a perfect example of that with Brock Vandagriff going to Lexington. Next up, Tyler Shough. He has left Texas Tech. This is his second time transferring. That man just keeps heading east, man. He went from Oregon to Texas Tech. Now he's going to Louisville. Now, I'm not going to lie. This one surprised me because Louisville has been in the mix for a handful of quarterbacks. And of all the ones, I'm a little surprised that they ended up going with Shough. But there's still more to come here with the portal. I don't know if they're done yet looking for quarterbacks. Is Shough the guy there? What are your thoughts on this one? Is he for sure the guy for Louisville next season?
I haven't done this, but I want to give this B-, C+. I mean, and maybe I'm salty because Texas Tech was not the darling I thought they were going to be this year. And he was hurt, though. I mean, he had nothing. He was hurt. But with Shough, he's transferred twice. He's got injury history. And yeah, I mean, Louisville made the ACC championship with Jack Plummer, but let's not be ignorant. We know it's because the schedule was Charmin soft, and I think having to play a much tougher schedule next year may yield a different outcome. I still think Louisville's shopping. I think they'll have a competition, and hopefully for Ty, he doesn't get a Spencer Sanders here. But it's not a move that wows me. But I'll say what I say with Brosmer. Like, I don't hate it. I mean, because he is a serviceable quarterback, and I do feel like we maybe don't know what he is yet with the injuries. But at the same time, I am curious with the market if Louisville maybe could have pulled in maybe just a little bit more of a marquee name.
100% agreed there with everything you just said. As far as the move itself for Shough, I'd say, like we said last week, if you're Shough, Plummer, or not Plummer, what am I thinking? Brom is the guy that you want to play for if you're a quarterback.
Yes.
And hey, if he ends up being the guy there, that's a good career move for Tyler Shough. Mm-hmm. I'll say that. So, yeah, Jack Plummer won't be his coach, so let's not get that mixed up there. It's Jeff Brom is the coach, not Jack Plummer.